Hello, ladies and gentlemen. How are you doing? I am not going to show you placards. I'm just going to talk. You can find all the data down below this video in the description. If you can't find it, I will gladly send you anything that you're requesting, any sort of question you need to be answered. My telephone number is 203-556-1493, or email is Daryl, tqrs@yahoo.com. This video is about Underwriters ANSI-ANAB AS9100 certificate is like a Taylor Swift concert, pay to play. Yes, business owners, I opened my business in 2011. I thought that in the marketplace they needed a new sheriff in town. We became a registrar, GPMC LLC. We tried as independent accreditation. We tried to get into Boeing many times. We had companies who wanted to use us say, no, we checked. They only accept ANSI-ANAB accreditation. Well, as we go through this, we find out that Boeing on their supplier portal says the supplier must be ANSI, ASQ, National Accrediting Board, or international equivalent. And now it should have been now. What they did is they still left it the way it is, ANSI, ASQ, National Accrediting Board. In 2018, ANSI took over complete control over ANAB, the American National Accrediting Board, American National Standards Institute. And what happened is by them taking over the entire ball of wax, it should have said on their supplier portal, hopefully they did it a year later, but they didn't. They haven't done it in 6 years. It's still, if you look at it today, it's still ANSI, ASQ, National Accrediting Board. So that's how much they really care about quality. How easy was it for them to tell their administrator that does computers to just change it to ANSI-ANAB? But they didn't. That lackadaisicalness is going to bite them in the ass, I will tell you. In 2013, I gave a speech at the American Society for Quality. And there was a David Levy there, a Region 3 director, and from the ASQ. The ASQ, American Society for Quality, which also sits on ANSI's board, they owned ANAB 50%. ANSI, the American National Standards Institute, owned ANAB 50%. So it's 100% together. In 2016, because we were exposing this disgusting thing about Boeing not allowing us into their facility because we weren't ANSI-ANAB, nor would we be, because when Randy came out in 2016 and invited us because the heat was getting too hot in the kitchen, Randy Doherty. We have pictures of Randy I've showed you before. He was handing over the leadership of the IAF, which is incorporated in Delaware. It is a repository for both national and international accreditation bodies. Okay, he handed it over to a communist Chinese national, Zhao Jinwu, who's been involved with our quality since 1994. He is also, at that time, Zhao Jinwu was the chief executive of the China National Accreditation Services, equivalent to an ANAB, ANSI-ANAB accreditation, and he issued a certificate in the Wuhan lab. You got it so far? Back here, there was a Miss Pamela Sale, the vice president of accreditation for laboratory, and she said from one laboratory to another there are variances and they lack protocols, which means she basically confessed to the release of the COVID virus by her telling us about the problem with the certifications. Now, if they have certification problems with laboratory, they got a hell of a lot of certification problems with their ISO 9001, which is basically a management certification, along with their AS9100, which is for their aerospace certification for International Organization of Standards. We have all of this mess. 2018, a bunch of scientists from the United States go to visit Wuhan, and they find out the laboratory is tainted in the fact that the research scientists say we need more trained technicians. In May of 2019, the CDC, which also sits on ANSI's board, made a training document for virology labs in China. The only one listed in there was Wuhan, China. And it said, and I quote, the most important part of any well-run lab is trained technicians. So did Zhao Jinwu look at the documents to see if you have any trained technicians? Absolutely not. He just wrote it off and said, let's get the cash and run. And that's when COVID escaped. Nice. Isn't that a tender moment? So we look at this, pay to play. And what happened is, there I was, approved by both. I was invited to go. And what would happen is I would go out and I would try to solicit customers. They called me in, Daryl, I'd like to get into Boeing, and when I issued a certificate, they came back to me. They said, Boeing isn't accepting you. I said, listen, go to a second-tier supplier, and they did, and they accepted. At the present time, 13 years later, yes, Boeing is accepting products from our customers. It took us a long time. But, when you get approved by 50% approval back in 2013 by the Region 3 director from ASQ, which owned ANAB 50%, and then you get invited to join by ANSI-ANAB, vice president at the time, or actually he's a technical advisor when he invited us, but he was still the principal on the IF tax report. You feel, you don't need that because I wasn't going to get involved. I'm a proud American. I don't want to be involved with freaking China. All these companies, they got hacked in 2009. Boeing got hacked. Not only that, they got hacked in 2009 by China taking the F-35. 2012, division of United Technologies at the time, Sikorsky Aircraft, they got hacked. In 2015, Boeing goes to buy for $9 billion Sikorsky Aircraft. And in the Connecticut Mirror, it states, with China's okay, Lockheed Martin closes in on the purchase of Sikorsky aircraft. And you have our four representatives here, Rosa DeLauro, Jim Himes, Chris Murphy, and Richard Blumenthal, all praise Lockheed Martin for working with communist China. Maybe under their lapel pad, they looked under their lapel, the American flag, they have a made in China on it. That's what I think. So how can I get any sort of help, and remember this, in Connecticut, there's 3.6 million people divided into 7 representatives. 3 of them are like inept. You never hear about them too much in the newspaper, but those 4 are always in the newspaper. And how can you do that when they handle 500,000 constituents each approximately? It's never going to happen. Statistically and mathematically and methodologically, it's not going to happen. They will never do anything, especially since they sympathize with China, especially after the approval of our number 1 military contractor, dear God. So I go out and they say, Daryl, I have to get the ANAB certificate. I already had one guy say to me, Daryl, we have to take the road of least resistance. Daryl, I have to keep the balls in the air. It's a ISO certificate. It's AS certificate is a nuisance to us business owners. This is what their mantra is out in the marketplace because of Boeing's constriction on both their supplier portal, and also the worst thing is not only supplier portal, but when you look and you see on this bulletin, I will have it in the description, that Boeing said, if you're AS9100 from ANSI-ANAB, send us your certificate, send us your parts, we don't have to audit you anymore. And that's been happening for 22 years. You don't make this up. And to make matters worse, the FAA gave them regulatory authority. So when those lawyers sued Boeing for MCAS, what did you do? You didn't get to tell the FAA? Listen, lawyers, they were the fucking FAA. And by the way, fucking is a word that Mr. Patrick Shanahan used to describe the F-35 program when he was Deputy Secretary of Defense. So I can say it too, because you know something? It is what it is. It's a quality term. It truly is. If you're going down on one of these aircraft, you say, we're fucked. That means the quality of the aircraft is no good. My telephone number is 203-556-1493 or Daryl, TQRS @yahoo.com. And once again, Underwriters ANSI-ANAB AS9100 certificate is like a Taylor Swift concert. Pay to play.